So this is the Laz Emporium fanzine, and you're listening to Steve Bill interview artist War Boutique. War Boutique's art is truly cross-cultural, embracing not only sculpture and textiles, but design, fashion, and engineering. Originally from Glasgow, he became interested in theatrical set and costume design before studying first at the Scottish College of Textiles, then on the fine art course at Goldsmiths College in London, where his first brush with the media came in the form of a now infamous cameo on the BBC4 documentary, But Is It Art? We can't find that anywhere, Kevin, can we?
Hopefully not. But I may have a copy somewhere on disc. So
we'll save that for Instagram stories. His unparalleled craftsmanship has seen him collaborate with fashion designer Alexander McQueen, tailors Gieves and Hawkes, and streetwear brand Maharishi, plus artists Sarah Lucas and Banksy. Outside of the cultural canon, he's also been commissioned by, and some of this may surprise you, the Metropolitan Police, the Italian Carabinieri, Mexico City Police, I imagine they need some body armour, plus the British, Indian, Egyptian, Pakistani and Algerian armed forces. War Boutique, aka Kevin Leahy, am I pronouncing that right?
Spot on.
Thank you very much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
So what we're going to do is we're going to go through some of your key pieces that we can talk about.
Sure.
First, let's show everyone the works we've got from you on Laz Emporium at the moment. One of them is this, which is Luminal Shield.
Yep.
And that's a Metropolitan Police riot shield with neon.
Yep.
And it's an authentic Metropolitan Police riot shield, correct?
Correct, yeah. It was issued to myself as part of kit. So I was issued with the full, what they call public order uniform. So helmet, shield, batons, the works type of thing. Just basically so I as an armour designer, you can see exactly what kit the guys have to wear, how heavy it is, how it handles, what interacts with what. So you get to understand more the workings of all the pieces of personal protective equipment, as they like to call it. Most of the stuff that I use was just comes from my background in the armour design, and so the first shield I did was issued to me
as a sample for you to work from.
Yeah, so I used to go on mad training days with these guys, so you got to dress up in all the kit and, walk through, lay down at the training ground. It used to be down at Hounslow Heath, but they've moved it now, it's quite an amazing place. So they would have like a little milk float going around with Molotov cocktails in the back, and then all the off-duty cops are dressed up in their football strips and stuff, Millwall supporters, etc., and they just grab all the bottles and lay down a big bed of flames, and all the new recruits have got to walk through the live flames kind of thing. It's quite exciting, and your visor starts steaming up, your shield steams up, you can't see jack shit, you can't see if you're going or what you're doing, and it's all quite chaotic at first. It's quite an experience.
It sounds like it.
Yeah, it was good fun.
And so, we'll talk about a bit more about all that in a minute. And this is your other piece, which we've got available at the moment, which is called Smile.
Yep. Yeah. Again, the original helmet was issued to me. I have obtained others to keep the series going, type of thing. But yeah, so these were all very personal pieces to me to start with. So they'll physically fit me. They were issued to me as design samples, type of thing. So it's just using, recycling, the stuff from one world into another world, type of thing.
And how they merge is quite fascinating and might surprise everyone. So let's take a look at the first piece, that we've decided to talk about. Now, this is sort of kind of customized Metropolitan Police gear. Now, the Metropolitan Police, for international viewers, is London's police force.
Yep.
And obviously, normally this says Metropolitan Police, and you've changed it to Metropolitan Peace, and you did the same with the stab vest. So how did this project come about?
So, yeah, I was actually on my way back from a firing range down off the M4. I was doing a job for the MPS, the Metropolitan Police Service. They have a unit called OTSU, which is their Operational Tactical Support Unit.
Right. Okay. I mean, just to jump in, just to make it super clear to the viewers, this is your not your day job as such, but this is something you do. Is you are pretty much the go-to guy for military and law enforcement protective equipment, kind of worldwide.
Yeah, I mean, I've worked internationally. Most of my focus was on the UK, though, working with a lot of specialist units within security services, if you like. You know, I mean, I've armoured up, you know, prime ministers, pop stars, all sorts of nonsense, horses, dogs, you know, you name it. Quite a variety of people and things that need protection. You know, so people come to you and say, you know, I need protected, and I'll say from what, and they'll tell you what their threats are specifically. And yeah, you kind of just engineer something based upon that. But the Metropolitan Peace itself, so I was on my way back from doing this job at a firing range for the Met, and I was heading into London on the M4, and I see this overhead motorway sign. It says London closed. It's just simple as that, just London closed. But I'd already had a phone call from someone a few hours earlier to tell me that, you know, what was kicking off in London. So this is actually 2005. It's the 7th of July, and it went on to be known as the 7/7 bombings.
Right.
In London. So, yeah, see this sign, you know, London closed. I keep going back, head to my studio, offload my bag from all the stuff that I was doing for the Met that day. I'm listening to the news, listening to these horrific atrocities that are happening, you know, throughout London, with the tube trains and the buses being bombed. And I'm looking at this vest, and it's got this badge on it, Metropolitan Police. And just lying on my desk, I had a black Sharpie pen and a white Tipex correction pen. And I suddenly started working the text and turned the word police into peace, very roughly, you know. And I thought, oh yeah, that for me, that just it's what we're needing here. You know, this was a horrific time. People, you know, London hasn't been bombed for a long, long time. You know, not since the IRA.
Mm-hmm.
Before that, you know, probably the Blitz type of thing. So it was very current. And it was just staring at Metropolitan Police badge, and I just thought, you know, I don't know, it just came to me. And yeah, so after that, I got a friend of mine to embroider me up the first. I did a pair of Metropolitan Peace badges, just, you know, properly. So using their font, if you like, from their crest badge and creating it so I mean, a lot of people when they look at it first still read it as Metropolitan Police.
Sure.
You know, it's a thing in the eye. If you live in London, particularly, you know, you're used to seeing, you know, that as a badge on that scale and those proportions. So yeah, people just misread it all the time, kind of thing. But that sorry.
No, you go first.
No, so that's really the origins of it. As I say, you know, it was born on this, you know, on the day of the 7/7 bombings.
And it found its way into the culture, shall we say?
It did. So about a month after this, I did a show. But I was doing workshops with the Southwark Youth Connections and the Damalola Tailor Trust in Peckham.
And Damilola Taylor being the young boy who was stabbed.
Yeah, yep, unfortunately, yeah, yep. So Southwark Youth Connections, they were working with a group of kind of disenfranchised kids, and so there was proper key workers there, if you like, who knew how, because we're getting these kids to talk about traumas in their life, what happened, and we gave them all a stab-proof vest to decorate, so they could embellish it, sew it, paint it, whatever you wanted to do, and that formed a collection which was shown in the gallery at the end of the workshops, and there was some quite deep stuff came out of it.
I imagine.
But as I say, there was proper workers there to deal with that kind of thing, not just an artist going, yeah, well, don't know what to do with that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, no. So from there, yeah, and the Met came along to that as a show actually, and kind of not endorsed it as such. They said it was a bit naughty what I'd done with the badge, but the sentiments behind it, they got it completely. So I don't know if they fell out with me there or not. But it was done in good faith. It wasn't done for anything nasty. It wasn't having a pop at them. It's one of the most difficult jobs in the world, being a police officer, like being an honest police officer. And they do get a rough ride. And I've met a load of tossers that are policemen, and I've met some really, really amazing people. It's a bit like cross-section of life. You get good and you get bad. But yeah, it's mainly the bad cops that that are newsworthy type of thing, and that's a bit of a shame. But I'm not on any side here, just on the side of good.
And is there any? I remember when Banksy made the die-faced tenor, and that was one of the few times that the office actually got a call from the authorities saying, "Please, can you stop doing this?" Isn't this sort of impersonating a police officer or anything like that? Do you not get?
I think it's on the. I think it's a fine line, fine blue line between. Yeah, it kind of is impersonating, but you'd have to be dyslexic to really believe that type of thing. I am dyslexic, but yeah, no, it is. I mean, I've been stopped myself. I was on my bike one day, and this guy comes up to me and says, the guy ran down there and went behind that building there. He's got a large machete. Off you go. Okay. Because he just misread it. I had it on a high-vis cycling jacket, and he just read it as Metropolitan Police and was trying to point me in the right direction for something that just happened. And yeah, the thought of a bloke with a large machete, I just cycled the other way.
Even with in a stab vest that you made yourself.
Yeah, I mean the thing about these stab vests and stuff is that what genuinely happens a lot of times is that a lot of the young police officers coming into the force, they go and they get kitted up, they get trained up, and they go out for the first time, and a lot of them genuinely do feel bulletproof, and therefore put themselves into situations or aggravate situations unnecessarily so, because they genuinely think they are bulletproof.
Mm-hmm.
And the thing is, if even with a bladed weapon, you can still get to major arteries and stuff, and so the stab vest, bulletproof vest, whichever they're wearing, is it's not all that. It's meant to protect all your vital organs, but there's always gaps somewhere. So yeah, I mean that's the thing that a lot of these police officers, as I say, it's quite sad that they do that. They put these uniforms on and they suddenly, think they're genuinely bulletproof.
Yeah, I mean, well, we are divorced from our physical selves and the reality of violence a little bit, aren't we? And we can talk about that when we get on to one of the other pieces. So let's take a look at this. This is Back to School. And this you came up with in response to a number of child stabbings.
That's right, yeah. So at this point in my life, I'd moved into into a studio space in a working church in Peckham. They gave me this old Victorian cloister to mess about in. And these 4 schools are just round about that North Peckham estate where my studio was. And all I was hearing in the news was another kid stabbed to death in their school uniform outside the school. You know, and there was real spates of it going on. And I just felt in some way I wanted to try and give some kind of response to that. You know, rightly or wrongly, I know this is people who've lost their young children for real. This is not an art game. This is something that, you know, it's affected people's lives. So I wanted to do it in a sympathetic way, but I also wanted to do it in a kind of punchy way. So I set up this exhibition back to school in a gallery in New Cross Road, South East London. And, you know, the gallery owners were phoning me, you know, 10 minutes after I left saying, oh, you know, I've just had a couple come in, a couple of parents, you know, they want to know if you've got, you know, one for Harris Peckham Academy for a boy aged 12 and a girl aged 14, kind of thing. You know, I was like, oh, for God's sake. They said they could have sold dozens of them, you know. People genuinely walking past thinking, oh, wee Jimmy or Jeannie, you know, she's going back to school, so, you know, they use blazer, school bag, stab vest. It just got me thinking, you know, where are we in society that, you know, this is even required? It's
and are they mass producible? Could you have put them into production?
Yeah, because I mean they're all sized, so, and you know, and they're available male and female. So yeah, they could have been, they still could be, but yeah, that was never my intention. But yeah, you could very much get them in, you know, primary school sizes up to, you know, whatever.
And how about the actual engineering of the garments? Are they easy to make in little sizes? Did you already have kind of small sizes for, you know, Saudi diplomats' children or anything like that?
Yeah, so, I mean, a lot of the small sizes do exist, but for some of these, it was just a case of grading down the smallest size another couple of sizes. You know, everything grows in increments up or down. When you're doing kind of pattern technology, so it was really, really easy just to adjust them down to these sizes.
And you first started working with Kevlar, which is that the fabric for bulletproof and stab proof?
Yeah, it's all used mainly in combinations. So like the Met Police vest is currently what they call a dual system, so it's stab and ballistic. So it has a kind of a Kevlar or aramid pack at the back that does the heavy lifting, if you like, the stopping. And in the front part of the kind of anti-stab system, they still use to this day chain mail.
Really?
Yep, yeah. Only produced by one company, really, out in Germany, a company called Friedrich Munch, who used to make it as armour for kind of fighter plane, early kind of World War I, II fighter planes type of thing, and then these continue to this day. And they produced the chainmail for like kind of butcher's aprons and gloves and type of things like that. But yeah, the chainmail still used, and body armour where it really is still used. There's a few companies use the Kevlar and stuff without the chainmail, and they impregnate it like with a phenolic resin or type of thing. Which kind of closes up any gaps between the warp and weft of the weave structure. But these armours, they lend themselves to they're really stiff, they're really smelly, they're really uncomfortable to wear, but they're one of the best in terms of kind of weight ratio of stopping rounds and stopping knives.
And you first started working with this stuff at the Scottish College of Textiles on because when the Ministry of Defence gave you a summer project.
Yeah, they were looking for normally up to this point in time, Kevlar's only ever been woven. So, just a simple woven structure. And they wanted to look at the merits of knitting. So as opposed to just putting it onto, an automatic knitting machine and knitting up a few samples, it's a very dangerous thing to do because the yarn is so strong that normally what happens is if there's any flaws at all as you're actually making the fabric, normally the yarn snaps and the machine will keep going or stop. But with the Kevlar, you have to be careful because the needles break and the machine breaks first, and the yarn doesn't, type of thing. So it's all done on old. The samples I done were done on old hand V-bed stall knitting machines, and they just gave me a different range of knitted structures at different tensions that they wanted, and I just sat and for the summer just knitting up these. I don't know what ultimately happened to them. I wasn't involved at this stage, still a student. So I just knitted the samples, handed them over, and that was the last I heard.
But there was a girl on the project as well who was working for a outfit, a rum organisation, as they would have said in Bridge Over the River Kwai, called FIST. And what did FIST stand for?
That was the Future Infantry Soldier Technology Programme.
And this is actually a thing. So this is like military R&D.
Yeah, very much so. So they do projects like she was working on a new camouflage, which basically was kind of LED type stuff, and all sorts of wires actually woven through the fabrics. And the soldier would wear he'd have a little tiny camera reverse mounted in his helmet so that everything that was behind him was projected onto him and you can kind of become invisible type of thing.
And this was your first view into this world, yeah?
It was, yeah, while I was at college, Textile College. That was my first kind of dipping my toe in the water type of thing.
And you started to work with it more and more, and that became your discipline.
Well, yeah, no. So after I graduated, I actually my first job was working with a costume company in Glasgow, just making theatre costumes for different productions and stuff like that. And then I moved to London. Desperately saw this job, absolutely dream job, which was designing kind of military type looking equipment and stuff for Action Man.
Amazing. Let's get the next piece up because that's a bit that this is a good point to move on. And we'll talk about this in a minute, which is a armored pinstripe suit that you made for Gieves and Hawkes, the Savile Row tailors, and I think is that Bill Nighy, the actor?
It is indeed. Yep. This was for the Robin Hood tax thing. We're trying to get the large corporations to cough up just a little bit more tax, which will help us all out immensely. So Bill lent his weight behind that.
So, but anyway, back to Action Man. So obviously, like any right-thinking male member of Generation X, you loved Action Man as a child.
Absolutely.
And there was a funny story I heard about how you were always late to war because you were making sure the outfit was on point.
Naturellement, yeah.
and you applied for this job with Action Man with Hasbro, and you had this first class degree from the Scottish College of Textiles that specialises in military equipment, and they didn't give you the job.
Yeah, they said no. Sorry, come back when you have a little bit more experience. You're just out of college.
Chestnut, yeah.
You're just out of college. Blah blah blah. So I was absolutely devastated. I was living with my brother and his wife in London at the time, and unbeknownst to me, my brother had seen a job advertised that same day in the Evening Standard, looking for someone to design the Action Man type stuff, but for real, So This was a company on the Old Kent Road in London. Yeah, and I went along, saw their facility, had the interview with them, and started to see all this equipment for real. And it was quite exciting. Not quite Action Man level, but
but it was the real thing. And then years later, you'd find yourself applying these kind of technical armored aspects to civilian wear, a bit like with the school uniform, but this time with a pinstripe suit.
Yeah. So yeah, I was approached by Robert Gieves. He's now passed away, but he was the last member of the Gieves family, to run Gieves and Hawkes in Savile Row, #1 Savile Row kind of thing. And he took me in and he showed me around their most amazing space that they have, with just centuries of tradition, old military uniforms. Showed me all these things, all this amazing hand sewn, hand embroidered, gold gilded kind of military uniforms that
aren't they the official tailors for the dress uniforms still?
Yeah, they're one of them.
Have been for decades and centuries.
Yeah. So it's the kind of thing, if you were off to war, World War One or two type style, then you wouldn't take your MOD itchy clothing. You would head off to Gieves and Hawkes and get yourself kitted out for whatever you wanted for war. So they've just got this amazing archive and history of these uniforms. But the guy was showing me this whole rack of all these amazing, looked like kind of lifeguards outfits from the Action Man days. The big, white trousers, big thigh-length leather boots, huge big hats, with the helmets with the big horsehair tails coming off the top of them. And he's telling me that these are specifically for the Queen's bodyguard. And they go out once or twice a year, these guys. But he's saying they're all like 70 and 80-year-old lords and whatever type of thing. So each year before they go out to Windsor Castle to do whatever thing they do with the Queen, they have to come into Gieves and Hawkes, and the uniforms have to get shortened because all these old guys get older, every year. So yeah, these uniforms are just taken in, if you like.
So, I mean, you've worked with a lot of fashion designers over the years, like Alexander McQueen, Maharishi, and we're going to see some of your work we've done with them in a little bit. And he, on Savile Row. What role does fashion play in what you're doing? Because you're somehow combining sort of military and protest and the sartorial as well. And what element does the sartorial provide in the work?
I think it just gives an easier reading, if you like. Everybody likes a bit of satire. It just allows it to exist and to be commented on, I suppose, because of those elements. Everybody looks at it and they've never seen these two type of things kind of married together before, so I suppose it's contemporary in that perspective. But everyone's always looking for a little twist, something they can,
And I mean, what in terms of sort of armoring people? Obviously, I'm from the media, and we used to say sex sells, and now we say fear sells.
Sure, yeah. I mean, there's always been that element to my work. I've always wanted to kind of make kind of wearable artworks in a way. I'm not sure why, but I do and have done and will continue to do so. I mean, I believe society does need protection. What does it need protection from? Half the time, the very thing that's meant to be looking after it, type of thing. It's a strange one.
And with the city gent here, how effective is that from like sort of marauding feral gangs?
Yeah, so I mean, it's actually made with one of the lightest armor systems in the world. Um, it, it's got upgrade panels inside it as well.
Uh-huh.
So I mean, it'll stop ending up to kind of AK-47 type of round, 7.62 NATO ball rounds, 5.56, all the real kind of heavy, kind of yeah, real heavy chisel. Kind of the worst things out there, if you like. So it will protect it. It's
Uh-huh.
full Kevlar helmet. It's actually got a ballistic laptop case as well,
Right.
as a kind of shield. The umbrella on the guy's side, there's a hidden sword inside there, which has got a nice wee story to it. So everything is real functional. The guy's got his pepper spray or CS gas, his little pouch on the side. He's got his chainmail covered leather gloves so that you can grab bladed machetes or whatever enemy's coming at you with, type of thing. So I did it as a kind of piss take, to be honest, on, rich people can afford the kind of best protection that there is, type of thing, where the rest of us are just left to fend for ourselves. And this was taking it to the nth degree. So you'd want it, you'd want the lightest, best armor system in the world housed within, Gieves and Hawkes' finest chalk stripe worsted wool fabric, type of thing. It was trying to make it luxurious, but also kind of take the mickey at the same time. Kind of going, what is this dude? What he's about? Why does it exist? What's going on here? Type of thing. So again, with all the different flashes and embroidery on the side of the chap, the military industrial complex, third bank division. There's all a bit of symbolism in there as well. It depends how kind of deep down the rabbit hole you want to go with the piece, But yeah.
So he looks just about ready to cope with the Northern Line at 7:30 in the morning.
Absolutely. But yeah, so the umbrella that he's got, it's got a hidden sword inside it. And when I was pulling a few of the bits of the accessories together for the piece, I sent off to a company in America. You can't buy them in this country, umbrella swords. And it got stopped at customs on the way back, and I got this nasty letter from customs saying, you're lucky you're not getting charged here. This is a concealed weapon, not allowed in the UK. We're confiscating it, kind of thing. So I phoned them up and I said to them, well, look, I'm not a terrorist. I'm not a nasty person. This is for an artwork. You don't make any exceptions. So they looked at the rule book and they said there's only two exceptions to having an umbrella sword in this country. Number one, if it's a genuine antique, which this is clearly not. Or number two, if it's for art and cultural purposes. I said, thanks very much, I'll have that. Got a friend at a gallery to write a letter to them explaining that's exactly what it was. And then a couple of days later, the umbrella, the sword comes through the post, So all's well that ends well.
So, I mean, we touched a bit earlier on people feeling invincible when they wear armor.
Sure.
Personally, I am more sympathetic to wearing a mask over my face just because it makes me feel better than I am wearing a mask over my face because it actually protects me from minuscule viruses. Where do you stand? And I'm not asking you to talk about coronavirus and masks. How much do you sort of sympathize with the emotional aspect of wearing protection?
Yeah, I'm not sure, really. I mean, it's a bit of a double-edged sword. But I believe that, equipment should be there for X type of job, and it depends. Because, let's say, so I remember some of the cops telling me that, they're not so scared of like a Friday or Saturday night brawl type of thing kicking off and them getting injured and that. The stats show them that they're more than likely to be stabbed to death by some nutty farmer with a, shot by a farmer with a shotgun, or stabbed by his wife with a kitchen knife on a wet Tuesday afternoon type of thing. It's a bit of a weird one. But yes, stats show you that and these people, so they join. A lot of these guys join the force. They are good people to start out with. Some of them stay good people, and a lot of them are doing a job that you and I would not do. I wouldn't bringe into a farm with some bloke with a shotgun and his wife with a big knife and try to, disarm people. It's either the type of person you are or you aren't. But yeah, it's a strange one.
So here's quite a different piece. And this is something you do quite a bit, which is play with sort of tapestries and textiles and functional fabrics.
Yeah.
And so this is part of a trilogy. And was this the first one or the second one?
That was the first one. Yeah, that's the first of the trilogy.
So tell us what the Great Game is.
So the Great Game was the term that was coined for basically it was around about the first Afghan war back in 1840 something, when what was then wasn't quite the British Army at that point until the second Afghan war. So it was basically started off the story of the Honourable East India Trading Company, who had its own militia type of thing, and basically would enter foreign lands and take whatever riches they could find, at gunpoint. And yeah, so this is a history of the fabrics, basically the military fabrics that have been used from 1830, 1840, right up until the current day. So each letter has been cut out of a military uniform from that period, and it just each letter takes you chronologically through all the different campaigns of basically British troops in Afghanistan. So a lot of people think the first Afghan war was, a decade ago or so, but it's centuries ago. And for some reason, we're still at it. We don't understand the geopolitics of it all. But for some reason, we keep going out there and treating people very, very badly. So the piece, it goes into a lot of history if you actually look into the kind of compositions of the fabrics within each letter, the fibres used within it, the colourways used within it. They're all there for different specific reasons. And you can also look at the history of the manufacturing of this, where the fibres are sourced from, where the yarn's produced, where the fabric's made. And it tells you really, really quite a lot about this country and where we're currently at. Like the very last letter in the Great Game, the letter E, it's made out of what we call MTP, which is the new multi-terrain pattern camouflage, which is meant to be used for woodland and for desert areas, kind of mixed into one. You used to have separate fabrics for that.
Wow.
But it's now produced solely under license in China. So, if we want to go to war on any kind of large scale, then we'll have to put the order into China for the base fabrics in order to be able to make uniforms and armour and whatever else to kit the British Army. So it's these type of things that, fascinate me, how it moves from, we were such a textile powerhouse in the Victorian times, in terms of the machine types we use for manufacturing textiles, the machine types for kind of open source and cleaning fibres and producing yarns, and the whole 9 yards. No pun intended. We invented it. We owned it, and then over the years through the likes of kind of Maggie Thatcher's transfer of technologies and stuff like that, where you basically sell off the family silver for short gain, you know, before you know it, everything's made offshore, and you know, we actually produce nothing. Our textile industry is in dire straits. Manufacturing in general here in the UK is appalling, but manufacturing of textiles, I mean, everyone wants to go to H&M and buy a t-shirt for £2 or £3. You know, nobody wants to pay its worth, if you like. And yeah, that's a world we live in, and the Great Game is a real reflection of that. There's a lot more history within the piece, and again, it's one of these rabbit hole pieces. How deep and dark do you want to go? There is even there's an academic paper that's been written about this piece, and it's really dense and really heavy reading, but it does lay bare a lot of things that are maybe uncomfortable truths for us as a society. You're looking historically how we got to where we got to today, and yeah.
And that piece was actually bought by the National Army Museum.
Yeah, so again, it's quite an interesting piece. It was eventually bought by the National Army Museum. It did a few rounds of. It was shown at a few galleries in London before going off to the Herbert Gallery. Did an amazing show called Caught in the Crossfire up in Coventry.
Right.
So the piece was in there, and then it went on from there to the Royal Geographical Society, where it had its own kind of mini exhibition and talk for the day. And I was basically interrogated by a lot of people, a lot of questions, but it was good. It was good fun. But as I say, then the National Army Museum bought it, but they were meant to allow the piece to still be included in the Herbert's Caught in the Crossfire exhibition, the touring show. But when the gallery phoned up to ask for it, the touring show asked for it back, the National Army Museum just said, no, we've got it, we've caught it, we've captured it. You're not getting it back.
So you made another one?
So I made another one, and I used a kind of Farsi text. So it's an Afghan, in a kind of Afghan dialect. And they know that the Great Game as an expression. So the Great Game expression was kind of popularised by Rudyard Kipling. I think it's something called, is it Kim? The book? Yeah. So, but the Afghans have their own translation of it, which is the big game. And that's what this actually reads. And again, it uses the fabrics of the Great Game, but it's in a different font type, if you like. And yeah, that's now in the private collection of the Crown Prince of Saudi Arabia, Mohammed bin Salman. And I think what's pardon me, I think what's interesting about these pieces is because they've come from real garments, it's something about colours. You know, a lot of these, like the National Army Museum, and they don't like you messing with their cloth, if you like, with their colours. It's almost sacred type of thing. So yeah, I don't know if there was a lot of love for the piece from the National Army Museum, but they certainly wanted to have it in their collection for some reason. Which made me think, you know, that's the first kind of national big collection that I got to work into, and I always can ask myself, so what's pressed the hot button there, you know, as opposed to anything else that I've done. Which is why, I need to go on and finish the trilogy.
What's the third one then?
So the third one is the Russian kind of translation of the Great Game. Again, Russia, basically the Great Game was a kind of strategic war between Britain and Russia, but fought over in Afghanistan type of thing, the Khyber Pass, all that nonsense. So this one, the Russian one, is called the Tournament of Shadows, which, very interesting title in itself. I'll use a Cyrillic font. It's a piece that we're making over the next couple of months, but there's a lot of research still to do in the fabric. But I have just managed to find a beautiful piece of cloth that was actually woven not far from where I studied in the Scottish borders, a town called Peebles. There's a company there who they made some Russian cloth for Tsar Nicholas II, for his special kind of Cossack bodyguards, and yeah. So they placed this massive order for this most amazing, beautiful cloth, and then suddenly the order couldn't be fulfilled because Tsar Nicholas had been killed in the Russian Revolution. So basically, this company, Peebles, were left with thousands of meters of this cloth going, oh, well, what do we do? And they'd ordered in this amazing kind of Prussian blue, this amazing colour.
Is that it in the bottom right?
Yeah, that's a tiny little bit of it. And that's actually the pre-runner to... So basically this company, Peebles, managed to sell the cloth to what is now the RAF, but it used to be, before the RAF, it was the Royal Flying Corps. And that's where they came up with the expression, the boys in blue type of thing, because it was such a strange blue colour.
Vivid blue, almost an Yves Klein.
Yeah, it's going that direction. Yeah. So I'm really interested to kind of really get into the history of the Russian textile fabrics as well, because there's such a massive link, especially during Victorian times with the royal families type of thing. So you always find a lot of kind of business goes on behind the scenes type of thing. So in the Great Game, there's a piece of khaki cloth, and unbeknown to most people, and until questions were asked at the House of Parliament.
Let's go back to it quickly.
So there's a piece down the bottom right-hand corner just above the blue.
Yeah.
Kind of khaki colour. And when we started off in World War One, sending troops out to the battlefield, we used to buy the khaki dye stuff from Bayer in Germany. And for a short time, this was allowed, powers that be behind the scenes allowed this to continue. So we could get troops in the right coloured uniforms and off to the war, off to the front, kind of thing. So it always just made me think, well, what else kind of gets to go on behind the scenes? So we were actively buying this fabric dye stuff from our enemy. So
is there a famous story about how when the British soldiers reached the German trenches in the First World War, they found blue circle cement bags?
I haven't heard that one.
Lining, so basically British companies were providing the infrastructure for the German trenches in the First World War, because trade still goes on.
Yeah, that's the point I was getting to. Yeah, it's kind of maybe war in the face of it, but it's we still do the gentlemanly thing and take each other's money behind the scenes. It's only war.
So this is the last one we'll look at, and this is quite different to everything else. It's sort of slightly different take on it all, and this was something you did with Maharishi, the streetwear label.
Yeah, so I went along to. I remember going to this was 2009, 2010. Can't remember. Basically, the G20 protests in London was the kind of the catalyst to kick this one off. There was a newspaper vendor called Mr. Ian Tomlinson, who wasn't involved in the protests on the day.
Oh, yeah, famous story.
Yep. So basically, this newspaper vendor finished his work, was heading back home, had to kind of go through a few protesters and stuff. Cops see him and decide to give him a couple of strikes with the baton. One of which, according to the autopsy report, was the one that killed him was a strike with the baton strike to the abdomen, which led to internal bleeding and led to his death. So the police baton chart is based upon a chart that is issued to all police officers during their baton training, and it's based on a kind of traffic light system. red, amber, green type of thing. With the green areas being hit away, you'll do kind of minimal damage through to the red areas, which is, there's a good chance you'll kill the person. So it's a tongue-in-cheek way of, of saying, look, protesters could wear this, and in the heat of battle, officers should remember their training and should this should be a kind of aid memoir to them to remember, which areas to hit and what damages it will do, type of thing.
And presumably a lot of this stuff is subject to quite rigorous testing normally.
It normally is. I mean, this was just made in organic cotton. It's just, there's no physical protective element to this. I was going to continue the piece and start to put Under Armour underneath it, like the cops wear for blunt trauma. But yeah, I just never got around to that part of it.
And have you ever been on a demo yourself?
On which side? Yeah, no, I mean, I'm not a big demonstrator, to be honest. I normally do, let my art talk. For me, I remember I was involved with a group of artists in Peckham at the time of the first Gulf War in Iraq, and there was about 50 artists in this space in Peckham, and every single one of them had disappeared one day to go on the protest marches, and it was just myself left there on my own, and I was thinking, why haven't I gone with these people? And the bottom line is with it is I don't know how effective in general protests are. I think there's other ways to protest. I think a lot of my art kind of does that in a way, and I'm more comfortable, within myself doing it that way than, I don't know, being kettled on the streets for a day or type of thing. Maybe I'm a bit of a lightweight, but that's just me, who I am, and I do like to try and look at the issues of the day, kind of put them under the microscope a bit. Use a bit of humour, a bit of something, a bit tongue-in-cheek thing, and try to bring it to the fore. So at least people are talking about it, negatively or positively. At least it's, you give the thing a channel. So yeah, that had Striking Suit had its own exhibition again. It was part of the I Protest exhibition up in Coventry again at the Herbert Museum. The slide you're now looking at is the piece was eventually donated to the the Arms Fair last summer, I think it was. So that's a picture there of it in situ at the Arms Fair exhibition in Peckham.
The Arms Fair exhibition you casually mentioned there. Do you go to a lot of arms fairs?
Oh, yeah. I remember my first Arms Fair I went to. It was the RAF Longcross, it was. And I got the train out of Waterloo. I was working in Peckham at the time, down there. I was sitting in this train, and there's all these dudes from Italy, France, whatever, and they've all got their kind of dress one uniform on with all their gold braid and stuff like that. And they're all sitting in these carriages, and I'm thinking, what kind of world am I entering here? And just before we get to RAF Longcross, a group of protesters decided to kind of padlock themselves to the train, and suddenly, I'm still thinking, well, what side am I on here? This is not quite right. So eventually, they put us on another train, took us to RAF Longcross. Just before you get into the Arms Fair itself, you've got to pass this big line of RAF police with their Alsatian dogs all barking at you and stuff. It's quite intimidating, and then you get inside this place, and it's all these big, fat fuckers, pardon my French, chaps, all just, quaffing champagne and selling arms and stuff, and they're telling me all these wee tricks they're up to, so if you've come over from some nasty regime and you want to buy some weaponry, they either take you up in a helicopter and take you out to a ship that's just based in international waters, or they'll take you up in an aeroplane so you're in the international airspace, and you can do the deals tax-free. I didn't realise that. So it's all these little subtle nuances that you start to pick up on. You know, okay, this is just a game, you know, and it's just all these, you know, boys' toys for sale. But the bottom line is that people die because of, you know, what these companies produce, and that's why I always had an issue with what I was doing. You know, I used to try and justify it to myself by saying, you know, you're not making guns. You're the other end of the barrel. You know, you're protecting people. And then it's like, well, who are you protecting? Why are you protecting them? Why should they have more protection than someone else? You know, how do you measure good and bad? And yeah, loads of issues. So eventually I had to jack it all in and take apart instead, because I find it more therapeutic, shall we say. Plus, I was doing a lot of stuff for the police, and it gets really boring. This season's black is black again, you know. So I wanted to add some colour to my life.
And talking colour, so there's Smile, which is one of your pieces that we've got available at the moment. And obviously things like shows and exhibitions right now are up in the air. But do you have anything going forward that you've got planned?
So in my head, I've got a shield show planned, which is just a whole range and variety of different shields, ballistic shields, bomb shields, riot shields. Yeah, I've got quite an extensive collection that I really would like to squeeze into a show, as I say, the shield show. But I haven't approached anyone as yet, because, you know, it's all a bit up in the air still at the moment, you know, with what's happening. And then I was thinking to try and do an online show, but with my IT skills, it's a bit of a non-starter. I'm lucky to be on this call today.
Well, we haven't checked the recording yet.
That's true. That's true.
So thank you to everyone who's listened. Very, very kind. If this has made its way onto YouTube or anything similar, for God's sake, like, comment, and subscribe. These things are very, very important for the algorithm that rules all our lives. You've been listening to Steve Beale at Laz Emporium, talking to War Boutique. You can find his pieces over at lazemporium.com, and you can find out more about him at warboutique.com. Thank you very much, Kevin, for joining us today.
Steve, thank you for having me.
Our pleasure, dude. Have a wonderful afternoon.
And you